to slash inheritance and business tax and also reform the welfare system in an effort to win over Tory MPs. And despite previously stating such a move would be virtually impossible this year, the Chancellor says now is the time to focus on growth.
The best way that we can reduce the tax burden for everyone is to grow the economy. There's no shortcut. If we grow the economy, if we support manufacturing businesses like the one I'm visiting today in Sheffield, that means that we have more money to reduce the tax burden, but also to invest in public services like the NHS. So we will always take a balanced approach, but putting the economy first.
During his visit to Sheffield, the Chancellor announced his spending plans will include £4.5 billion over 5 years to boost British manufacturing. Almost half of that will go to car makers, with aerospace companies and clean energy firms also benefiting from funding that will be available from 2025 after the next general election. Rishi Sunak's denied tinkering with the Rwanda policy after his former Home Secretary suggested his plan to save the scheme would fail.
Will the Prime Minister rescue the Rwanda plan, Mrs Braverman?
Suella Braverman, who was sacked this week, claims Rishi Sunak's attempts won't work unless he opts out of the European Convention on Human Rights. And she says the proposed new treaty and legislation are simply a tweaked version of a failed Plan A. Ms Braverman has warned Rishi Sunak his proposal will get bogged down in the courts. The Prime Minister, though, says he'll take on anyone standing in his way. Pro-Palestinian protest organisers are planning a national day of action tomorrow instead of another large demonstration in London. There will be more than 100 smaller rallies across the UK, 10 of them in the capital to show solidarity with Palestinians and to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Previous weekends have seen tens of thousands of protesters gathering in London, culminating in a huge rally on Armistice Day last Saturday. The Met Police says a significant policing operation will be in place. The man who murdered a schoolteacher in Ireland last year should never see the light of day. The words of Ashleen Murphy's mother, as her killer was sentenced to life in prison. The 23-year-old was murdered while jogging along a canal path in Tullamore in County Offaly in January of 2022. Joseph Puska, the 33-year-old, had denied the murder but was convicted by a jury last week. And outside court, police, who described the case as a monstrous crime, praised the victim's family for courage and dignity shown during the trial. Well, this is GB News, live across the UK on TV, digital radio and on your smart speaker too. That's it for the moment. Now time for headliners.
Thank you, Aaron. Hello and welcome to Headliners, your nightly run through the next day's headlines with three headline comedians. Can you see where the name came from? I'm one of them. I'm Leo Carson. I'm joined tonight by Scott Capurro and Nicholas DeSanto. How are you both doing?
All right, how are you?
And you just came from America where you're on the Gutfeld show on Fox.
I'm doing it at Fox TV in America, yeah.
Amazing.
Well, live audience, you know, they praise you, they put you in a nice hotel.
Yeah.
It's different from the lefties who throw things at you and tell you how awful you are. So.
Yeah. Nicholas, are you feeling a bit jealous that you don't get that level of service when you do this show? You're not getting a limo and
I definitely am, but already being on the panel next to Scott, who was one of my comedy mentors, and yourself is quite a step for me, so hopefully I'll get there.
Brilliant. Well, that's a surprisingly nice intro. Let's have a look at the front pages. The Guardian leads with Cameron call for billions in foreign aid risks Tory anger. The Telegraph has Hunt. The time has come for tax cuts. Somebody wants to get elected next year. The Daily Express has Prime Minister gets punchy. I'll take on anyone standing in our way. He's talking about the Rwanda plan. The News has Labour Health Chief tells NHS, I'll hold the door wide open for help from the private sector. The Times has toxic NHS puts people at risk, says Watchdog. The Star has 2028, the return of woolly mammoths. And those were your front pages. And let's have a closer look at those front pages, starting with the Telegraph, Scott.
The Telegraph, Jeremy Hunt, the time has come for tax cuts. He wants to improve the economy by taxing people less and cutting inheritance tax, cutting investment tax for companies that are being developed. And his final decisions about where the tax cuts will come will happen this weekend. He says that he wants to replicate the tax systems in North America and Southeast Asia and Asia, where he thinks the economy is growing really rapidly.
Yeah.
And he thinks that's because there's a lower tax burden in those places.
Yeah.
And he thinks if you tax people in higher positions less, they'll spend more money, although that's never been proven. That trickle-down theory has been thrown at people many, many times.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, if you don't have to pay as much in tax, then you spend the money yourself.
Or you
Nicholas.
hide the money and you spend it elsewhere in other
Yeah, but
countries.
you're not gonna get buried with it like some sort of Viking warrior. Like take your gold to Valhalla with you. You're gonna eventually splurge on a yacht.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, Nicholas, we've looked at sort of tax and the share of GDP spent by governments in Western countries has risen steadily over time, and it seems to be choking off the economy, choking off society, and we're gradually moving towards a sort of soft communism.
Because we are, it's somehow inevitable, unfortunately, because we have an aging population. People aren't having kids, and the governments don't support the family units, don't support higher birth rates. So we have a constantly aging and ailing population that is a burden on the healthcare system. And then at the same time, we have decided that we want to defeat Putin. So we have higher energy rises. So the subsidies for that gave rise to inflation, putting people, seating them on their coaches for 2 years, giving them money for nothing. That helped inflation rise. So the issue here is that Bank of England is squeezing money out of mortgage owners because they want to fight inflation. Now, we should see how these two policies can be reconciled, because if the government really does cut the taxes, that means more money, and rightly so, will be available in the market.
Yeah.
But that is in antithesis to the policy of the Bank of England.
To reduce inflation, if more money's splurging around in the market, then it's going to push up prices
A
potentially.
latte is £4.50 near my house now.
Oh my God!
I know. It's organic, but it's still £4.50.
Okay, well, moving on. What's in Saturday's Express, Nicholas?
Well, PM gets punchy. I'll take on anyone standing in our way. This is Rishi Sunak just after the Supreme Court rejected the government's appeal over the Rwanda scheme. For people who might not know, but how can they not? The idea was and is to send some of these asylum seekers, at least men who are in fighting age, and we don't know why on earth they are here if they are escaping from a war. Why are they not fighting? And worst of all, why have they left their women and children in the war and have come here?
Maybe the women and children are better at fighting wars over there.
So do we really need those kind of men for the future of our society? Let's give them to Rwanda. But the plan didn't take off, if you pardon the pun. And now the Prime Minister says he will take on anybody who stands on his way.
He doesn't look like someone, though, who could really, do you think?
No, he's about 4.5 feet tall.
Yeah, he's adorable. It looks like something you could pick up and move, He's so sweet.
It's a shame the only one he took on and he took down was Suella Braverman, who was arguably pushing in that direction.
And maybe an inch too shorter than he was, shockingly so. There's also that photo on the front page of Daily Express of Diana in the current season 6, I think, of Crown. Have you been watching the new season with Diana?
I have not, or the old season.
No, I haven't. I've only seen this one because I heard how bad it was, and this girl's terrible, and she's not even attractive. And Diana, one thing you can say about her was she was hot. Even I think that. Especially, I think. And this woman she has no boobies. No boobies.
Right. And we're getting, with the Crown now, it's pretty contemporary. This is only going back, 20 years or something, 25 years?
Yeah.
So people can remember.
Yes.
And so it's not like, if it's 100 years ago, you can fudge it around.
Right. Get away with it.
Yeah,
or the Queen, who's made up anyway. She'd been dead inside for decades. But this one, she actually had a chest now. And the new actress, the one thing actresses could have is nice breasts, I think. It's the least they could do for us.
And this comes
not in the post,
exactly.
Not in the post-Weinstein era, I'm afraid, Scott. But getting back to Rwanda, I mean, do you have any confidence in the Prime Minister that he's actually going to make the Rwanda plan happen?
It's never going to happen, no.
He's had years and years to make it happen.
For one thing, he's going to be out of a job in a year, but it won't be his responsibility. But also, the Supreme Court dawned it illegal 2 days ago.
Right.
They have a lot of climbing up a lot of ladders for that to happen. They've got to change the policy completely. They've got to find a way to make Rwanda more appealing, although the economy and Rwanda itself, again, as far as Africa is concerned, is doing quite well.
Yeah.
I think it's a bit of racism for people to think that that's a horrible place to go because it's a government run by Africans.
Yeah.
I think they think they can do a better job. I feel like the Conservative Party messed this up a little bit. I think also Suella is a bit unpopular. Maybe if they have a new person selling it with a slightly kinder
Well, I think Suella's
demeanor.
unpopular with screeching leftists, but I mean, what do you think of Suella?
No, I think very highly of her.
There we go. She's got a fan right here.
A lot of people do. I think a lot of people in the
Suella for
Conservative Party
Prime
were
Minister.
disappointed.
Yeah, I think she could well
that's
be.
what this is about anyway. She wanted out so she can run.
Yeah, I think she could be Prime Minister in 5 years. What did The Guardian have on the front cover, Scott?
Cameron's calling for billions in aid for his moral mission now that he's not back in office. He wants to unlock billions of dollars for foreign aid over the next decade to help the world's poorest people. Even though the Conservatives have closed the Department for International Development and slashed foreign aid budget, he thinks in his astonishing comeback that he can repair that and throw money at countries all over the world, which he thinks is the UK's responsibility.
So
actually.
he's going big on Hug a Hoodie. He's taking Hug a Hoodie international.
He is, yeah. He wants more friends,
yeah,
I think, and more people that'll hire him when he loses his job in a year. So.
Right, for vast sums on the speaking circuit.
Yeah.
But, I mean, Nicholas, we've seen a lot of the foreign aid budget, because of the cross-channel crisis, is actually spent in the UK housing refugee or asylum seekers, or people who say they're asylum seekers.
And thank God for that. But the foreign aid was already very unpopular. I don't know who is doing David Cameron's PR, the same people who do Hillary or Greta Thunberg's PR. I mean, this is very unpopular. The guy has just came back after leaving the country in turmoil. He bet his political career on Remain. He lost. I mean, any country worth its salt, his career should be finished. I mean, next time people make fun of Italian politics, I'm going to punch them while shouting jihad so the police won't arrest me in this country.
Well, I think Andrew Doyle made a really good point the other night where he said, no, clearly this is proof that the Conservatives have not run out of ideas by bringing Cameron back in.
Some of these countries we pay for, I don't want to mention names because I have fans from that country on my YouTube channel, but some of these countries we pay or we used to pay foreign aid to, they have space programs. They have, you know...
India, for example.
Pardon?
India.
Are these people that are fans of yours?
You know how many aircraft carriers? Yes, that's right. You know how many aircraft carriers his Royal Navy had? 1. How many India has? 2. I mean, it's just ludicrous.
So they should be giving us some foreign aid so we can buy another aircraft carrier.
There's a slightly larger country with maybe a wider coastline.
And it's probably not going to aircraft carriers, in fairness. But I mean, there is the saying, I don't know who coined it, that foreign aid is taxing poor people in the West to give to rich people in the third world, which is very true.
That's a good deal for them.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
It's a good deal for everybody except the British taxpayer. Finally, what's on the cover of the Daily Star, Nicholas?
So this is the 4th headline, the 4th cover. I usually get these, let's say, heartwarming stories, a bit of a science story. Exciting news for Star readers fond of the Pleistocene epoch. Okay, I had to practice
Well done.
the pronunciation. Thank you.
Really well done.
That's the epoch of modelling clay.
In the epoch of?
Modelling clay. Sorry, just a little joke. Because plasticine.
Plasticine, yeah.
Yeah, but this is, I don't know how many fans of Mammoth's Star counts among its readers, but apparently scientists from this corporation called Colossal Biosciences are hell-bent on reviving the mammoth in as few years as 5. Basically, by 2028.
Is that how long they take to thaw out?
Longer than it takes to?
Is that how long they take to defrost in the microwave?
No, it's not going to be a full mammoth to defrost, but they're going to use a bit of fossils and mix it with DNAs of actual
I've seen Jurassic Park. Don't worry about it. I understand how it works.
He gets it.
And
We all
then
get
the
it.
mammoths go crazy and
We've all seen this.
eat everyone.
Well, I don't know how wild mammoths were, but they look like more, I don't know.
I think they're vegetarian. I think they're a bit woke vegetarian, the mammoths.
Right.
Yeah, so I think...
But then hippos are vegetarian. They kill people.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I mean, it's basically a big hairy elephant. I'm not a scientist, by the way. Anyway, that's it for part 1. Join us in part 2 for TikTokers praising Osama bin Laden, Labour privatising the NHS, and Tony Blair back in the Middle East. Spicy. See you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese.
I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
Affects us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mammoths.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm still Leo Carson. I'm still here with Scott Capurro and Nicholas DeSanto, and kicking off this section with the Daily Mail and a sign of how far woke culture has diverged from reality. TikTokers are praising Osama bin Laden, and Jewish stars aren't happy, Scott.
Well, they've been reading his letter to America online, the kids, because they're bored and angry at their parents and they hate themselves. So they've fallen on the lap of Osama bin Laden. They think he's a soothsayer from the past. They don't really know what happened, 23 years ago, I guess it is. 9/11. I know that time, it's just flown by. But Osama wrote this letter to America and said some pretty nasty, negative things that these kids think is true. So they've been reading on TikTok. And Amy Schumer, Sacha Baron Cohen, and Deborah Messing took on the TikTok executives in a 90-minute heated sort of phone conversation where they demanded that they make some changes on TikTok.
Yeah.
And the executives basically said no to everything they demanded.
Wow.
And Sacha Baron Cohen said that TikTok, he accused them of being, quote, the biggest anti-Semitic movement since the Nazis, because TikTok is allowing all this, what Cohen interprets as anti-Semitic behavior going on TikTok. And the executives, Adam Presser, who's the head of operations, and Seth Melnick, the global head of user operations, have said, where it's clear, exactly clear what is meant when they say, quote unquote, kill the Jews, eradicate the state of Israel, unquote, the content will be taken down. That's what they say.
Right.
When it's clear that they are violating TikTok principles, we will take it down. But Messing wanted them to remove from the river to the sea.
Yeah, which is a chant for the whole of Israel to be, and all the Jews in it to be killed and
well, that's what Israel says that chant means. Palestinians claim, and people protesting in Bethel Green yesterday who were singing on the streets near my home, students who've been let out of school, weirdly, and were chanting it, claimed that it just means peace in Palestine, peace in Israel.
I mean, that's laughable.
You know,
that's ridiculous.
It is. And Messing was saying that too, and she's really, these people in LA, you know, at least these people in LA are saying, look, this is getting way out of hand, and TikTok, the social media giants, have to put an end to it.
Well, and it's not just a social media giant, Nicholas. This is, I mean, TikTok is owned by China, and it's basically a soft weapon. It's like digital fentanyl. It's a weapon that China is using to destabilize the West and spread divisive, harmful views. We've seen it with gender ideology, and we're seeing it with anti-Semitism.
There's viral videos on TikTok that go against family values, getting married and all that. But here, you know, this is my favorite Italian proverb. They say the law is applied to the enemy and interpreted for the friends. So basically the issue these Jewish stars have taken with, one of the issues is from the river to the sea, because Israel is between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea. But TikTok says, no, it is open to interpretation. Maybe they are using it casually. But I mean, if you say Zig Heil, which means we salute victory casually, and you're not aware of the meaning of that, would you not get into trouble?
But the police force here said the same about jihad, didn't they? They said it can mean all sorts of things. We all know what jihad is. It's a holy war. But I think in some way, people are trying to avoid conflict.
Well, I think people are scared of, people are basically scared of
losing money. That's what TikTok's afraid of. That's what these guys are afraid of, losing their job, actually.
Well, I think TikTok's afraid of not sowing enough discord in the West. I think it should be banned. I don't know why we don't ban it. We wouldn't let the Chinese government come and sell drugs directly to children in the West. Actually, they do. That's what fentanyl is. Anyway, moving on, we've got the eye now, and Tony Blair is advising Keir on the Middle East. Is he telling him the best way to bomb an Iraqi wedding, Nicholas?
Tony Blair is acting as Keir Starmer's Middle East broker. Apparently, Tony Blair is coaching Keir Starmer, you know, predicting that he will be our prime minister in a year or so. And he's using his experience and extensive network of contacts in the Middle East. Apparently, he's highly regarded, not just by Israel, but some other Middle Eastern countries as well. Anyone but the British people to become a potentially peace broker. Even there have been reports in the Israeli media that Prime Minister Netanyahu wants Tony Blair potentially to work as a, you know, peace envoy or Middle East envoy in case they are going to sort out the situation in the Gaza Strip after the war is over.
Well, yeah, because it says here that Tony Blair actually has an office in Israel. He's been trying to resolve the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, not with much success. If the last decades...
At least he was involved in it as Prime Minister as well. I think that he sees it, hopefully, as one of his legacy. I think that he hopes this will erase the memory of the disaster he led his country into earlier.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, to a lot of people who are on the sidelines, like gay men, they see Tony Blair as a bit of a hero because he introduced the idea of marriage equality to the UK government. And
that was eventually brought through by the Tory government.
It was. But he introduced the idea with civil partnerships.
Right.
And I think that for a lot of us, we see him as someone who represents people with difficulties. And I think that's the way he'd like to be remembered.
Yeah. And obviously, Israel must need some placating. The new Labour leader isn't going to be like the last Labour leader who called Hamas his friends, took money from Iranian state TV to appear, and generally, you know, had terrorists to tea.
At least he's not afraid, though, to get in it, to get in the mess. At least he's not afraid to have an office in Tel Aviv and to say, look, I'm here if you need me. You know, a lot of politicians who are in the position have just walked away. You know, we're looking for some sort of solution. There's been a solution that's been looked for the last 80 years, you know, and yeah, maybe Blair is the person that can help. I don't know. Somebody's got to fix this.
Yeah. Well, moving on, we've got the eye again, and the Tories have been accused of privatising the NHS for the last 13 years, and it still hasn't happened. But Labour have privatised, say they're going to privatise the NHS in the first week, basically.
Well, you know, part of the NHS has always been privatised, hasn't it? You know, the dental, the you know, reading glasses, the pharmacy. But I think that this guy is saying that we want to open the door to anyone who's got money to throw at the NHS to fix some problems.
Yeah.
You know, it's West Streeting, and I think that hold the door wide open quote kind of it might anger a lot of people because they're afraid that the NHS will turn into like an American healthcare system where you have to pay for a doctor's visit, all that stuff. And there are parts of the UK, I think it's either Jersey or Guernsey, where you do have to pay a very small fee for a GP visit, and the locals like it because then people are more likely to attend the GP visits. It's easier for you to get an appointment quickly, and it's only about 10 quid and people don't mind paying it. They think they're helping. So maybe there are a few privatizing strategies they can utilize to improve the NHS, and that's what he's saying. He's like, anyone with money, we're welcome to the idea.
Yeah, but I mean, this sounds like antithesis to what Labour stand for. This sounds like a two-tier NHS, Nicholas.
Well, Labour could get away. If had Tories been talking about privatising NHS, you can imagine all the backlash against them. But the Labour did privatise part of the NHS when they were in power. The problem is not privatisation per se, but what our friend Dominic Frisby would call crony capitalism. I don't know if he's watching us. Just look at what happened with the train companies in this country, the country that gave the world railway network, railway travel. The more companies we have, the poorer the service is, because you either privatize by giving the concession to your friends and buddies, and then there's no regulator or there's no effective regulation over the quality.
But rail isn't a free market, because obviously the trains can only go on the tracks that are there. It's not like the NHS could buy from any paracetamol provider. But I mean, privatisation makes sense for the NHS. It makes sense across all industries, because you can get more specialisation and more efficiencies. I mean, it'd be ridiculous for the NHS to manufacture its own ambulances, Scott.
Right, and I think that about 7% of their budget goes into the private sector already. And I think what people worry is that it's not going great for the NHS. So if we put more money in the private sector, will things get better or worse? I think it's impossible for people to picture what it might be like to have private companies involved in their own health care. But as we've stated, they already are. They're there. So maybe a little bit more would be so bad.
Yeah, and we might get receptionists that smile and answer the phone. We've got the Telegraph now, and economists can't agree on anything except that rent caps are a terrible idea. But Nicola Sturgeon has never seen a terrible idea she didn't like, Nicholas.
The SNP vilified landlords. Sturgeon's rent cap was foolish and short-sighted. Who would have known interfering with the free market? I mean, I think you have talked about this before on GBNews as well. We covered this on Headliners as well. Essentially, what happened was that they put this cap. They not only morally they vilified the landlords, but also the stock was reduced, because when the overhead cost, when the cost of being a landlord exceeds what you can gain in profit, obviously fewer and fewer houses are available, because landlords just leave the business.
And landlords sell their houses so people buy the houses, but then there's fewer houses for people to rent.
Exactly.
And there's no incentive for new landlords to enter the market, to build houses, to refurbish houses.
And ironically, rents in Scotland spiked far sharper than in England, because this cap was on basically raising your rent on existing tenants, but not once somebody new came in. That meant once everyone new was coming in, the desperate landlord had an opportunity to raise it, so raise it by much higher than what would have happened otherwise. Yeah. So Scotland, ironically, actually had sharper rent rises than England.
Yeah. And that's why rent raises went up so much for performers at the Edinburgh Fringe in the summer.
Oh, so there is a plus side. Comedians get
I know. Yeah, I know. What? And what I thought was interesting was a guy being interviewed, Michael Lawson, who's a landlord in Scotland, and he was talking about his own strategy. He was saying that dodgy landlords are old hat in Scotland, which is what Sturgeon's policy was trying to control. And then later he says, a really interesting thing, he says, Mr. Lawson said his family receives calls from tenants saying they're being evicted by other landlords. He said, I'm not a dodgy landlord, and dodgy landlords don't happen anymore. But then he said, there are all these illegal evictions happening. Right. So, it is rent control made rents higher in San Francisco than the rest of the U.S.
Yeah, we've seen it in New York as well, because the rents are controlled in certain buildings. It means nobody wants to let go of that rent. So then you get chains of illegal subletting. So people end up paying the market value.
By landlords themselves. They'll create units. In our building, a unit was just created in the cellar suddenly. It's hilarious. And, anything older than 1970 is rent controlled. Anything newer in San Francisco, you can charge whatever you like. Right. So some people are paying $5,000 for a flat the same size as mine, and I pay much, much less than that. that.
Right.
It's insane. There's no medium ground. There's no, and also there's no loyalty to landlords, vice versa. And also there's no ability to plan for anything in the future.
Yeah.
If you leave the city in San Francisco, you can never come back because
Right.
your rent will increase by 5-fold.
Right. I see what you mean. Anyway, we're done for part 2, but stay with us for asylum seekers faking gayness, Americans outlawing gayness, and trans Miss Universe going bust. See you in a couple of minutes.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth.
It's your new teeth. I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified.
I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Telegraph now, and apparently it's not just cocaine that's not as strong as it should be. According to a police boss, the laws to deal with cocaine are also too weak. Nicholas.
Drug crime policing pathetically weak, says Commissioner. So this is Alison Hernandez, a crime and police commissioner, or police and crime commissioner rather. She says this approach we've had for a few years now, right? The focus of law enforcement has been replaced by focus on the public health, our public health approach towards drugs. And that has made the attention divert from cannabis, because people now see this as more of a health problem, if at all. A lot of people, because there's been so much talk of legalizing it, a lot of people already think or believe it is already actually legal. And this is not a good idea, because apparently there's a lot of health issues still connected to cannabis. She thinks...
And terrible choices in music as well.
I agree.
And hairstyles.
And hanging up tie-dyed scarves and things.
You name it.
And sandals with socks.
It's just terrible. It's just terrible. And she says there's things on our streets. But the interesting thing is that it's not just the cannabis per se, but also gangs, she argues, gangs that deal cannabis manufactured locally here in Britain also are involved in other kinds of crimes, even exploitation.
And terrorism as well. We've seen terrorism being funded from cannabis farms and cannabis.
Of course, so there are a lot of ills that are connected to this. But
the IRA moved drugs around for years to fund themselves.
Yeah. And I mean, the focus, I mean, it does kind of make sense to focus on the drugs that kill people. But I mean, Scott, I'd say the argument against cannabis is it saps a person's life force. I've seen it with friends. They lose the ability, they lose all ambition. They just want to sit at home listening to Goa trance and smelling bad.
I think there's some positive aspects of it, especially if you're older and you need some healthy painkillers as opposed to pills, or people with HIV use marijuana to improve their appetite. There are all sorts of positive benefits to it too. But I think legalizing it has been such a boon in countries, in states in the U.S. as well. It's such a great tax revenue.
Yeah.
And it reduces the pressure on the police to monitor it, because let's face it, what she says is true. The streets of London are reeking with marijuana. There's no point trying to police it. They've lost the battle. They lost it 20 years ago.
So policing it has failed. We might as well legalise it.
It might, again, the revenue from it will be great for the UK.
Yeah. Well, moving on, we've got The Guardian now with proof that working class people aren't just ill-mannered and scruffy. They're also terrible at negotiating a salary, Scott.
They are. They should have done better in school, because now, when they go into the workforce, they're complaining that they get less money, I guess because of their accent. I'm imagining that's what it is. Isn't that what it is? No, because how else do you know someone's working class? But by the way they speak, or their vocabulary, I don't know. Although I know loads of working class people that sound pretty smart to me, but I'm working class, so...
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm working class, and I remember when I first got a job, I think part of the reason is you sort of see money in a different way. When I first got a job that was over 20 grand, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it. I felt like a millionaire. Whereas somebody who went to Eton probably wouldn't feel that rich.
Are you working class or just Scottish? Because they're kind of the same thing. I think what people are saying is working class people making about £6,000 less, like you said, annually, but that women who are working class have an even greater pay gap of almost 19% between the average professional salaries of a woman who's not working class, a woman who's from a decent background, and then a woman who's scraped her way to the middle, I guess. I don't know. I just think people like to complain. If you pay your mortgage, just shut your working class mouth and take your paycheck.
It's interesting to see that, this is worse than the gender pay gap, which is a bit of a myth, because it's really, it's a tax on having a baby, and only women can have babies, despite what Keir Starmer says.
Yeah.
I was, you're right, so much nuggets of wisdom in an introduction, but I totally agree. I'm very skeptical, because gender pay gap, I believe, is a myth. Now, this article in The Guardian, again, alarm bells, doesn't provide any evidence as to how they have come up with these figures, and how did they manage to establish that working class people are being paid less? Obviously, if this is actually the case,
they couldn't ask her in the office, because they're all posh at The Guardian.
Exactly. Yeah. Nobody has any, Northern or Scottish accent, but I think just hide the accent for a while. And of course, at least in some industries like TV, comedy, Northern accents or Scottish accents are in vogue. So I don't see a problem there.
It might be anecdotal, because working class people do rattle on and on. It might be some story they're lying about. I don't know, but I do wonder though why they bother. I was looking for the proof. You're right. I was looking for the evidence they had about these percentages, and I couldn't find any in this article. And it may just be, that they need to work harder.
Yeah. Well, 78% of statistics are made up. Everybody knows that. The Mail now with evidence that some people are pretending to be gay to claim asylum in Britain. It also helps when applying for Arts Council funding, Nicholas.
Who would have thought? This story obviously is enraging and funny in a way at the same time. Nigerian conman who won refugee status and the right to stay in Britain by saying he's gay claims he's bisexual after it was revealed that he fathered 3 children with different women in UK. He even married one of these women. I mean, he must have been a very active bisexual, considering that only half of his attention was...
busy.
He was really checking to make sure that he was gay. I mean, he was, he thought, maybe, I'm just going to make sure that I don't like this by impregnating another woman.
This is one of those stories. Before I became a successful panelist on such a prestigious show, headliners.
No need to be sarcastic.
No, I mean it, as I said at the beginning of the show. And it's a Friday night slot, so I'm very grateful.
You're doing really well.
Thank you. Yeah. I used to be an interpreter for some of these asylum interviews. Okay,
right.
And and these potential asylum seekers they were asylum seekers potentially successful. They had to rehearse their interviews with the Home Office, and of course their lawyers, all paid by the legal aid, by the way, so taxpayers' money, had to go walk them through this, prepare them so that the second interview would match the first interview. Long story short, the funniest thing I remember, the guy is being asked by the Home Office, "So you have converted to Christianity now?" And the answer was, "Yes, I swear to the Holy Quran. Yes." And I was just to make ends meet. I had to translate all these lies. You are Christian now. Tell us about the apostles. I have no idea who the apostles. I just love Jesus. You could have stayed in Tehran and loved Jesus in the bottom of your heart. If you are not a churchgoer, why did you feel that you were in danger?
Yeah, I mean, Scott, do you think we should get a bit tougher and maybe have some sort of test to make sure that people are gay when they're saying they're gay?
Well, that's what Theresa May wanted. She wanted film footage, if you remember. I think this guy had also been through a homosexual relationship in Nigeria. He'd been passed around as a young boy. He'd been abused, and when his lover helped him get out of Nigeria... According to him. When his lover helped him get out of Nigeria... his lover was murdered, and that's why he doesn't want to go back to Nigeria. He's saying, "I'll be killed too."
Right. Did he say that in an email asking for £50,000?
He did. He's broken the law. He owes somebody 220 grand. That's the part I have a problem with. Whether or not he's bisexual or gay, people do change their minds. I mean, we're all technically bisexual, right, Nico? So I think there's that in his favor, and he's still young, and he's still hoping to change his life. I just wish he didn't break the law. For that reason, I think he needs to be put before a court.
Okay, well, moving on, we've got the Mail now with Miss Universe going bankrupt after a row over transgender contestants. A case of go broke, Scott?
In the Daily Mail, apparently the Miss Universe judge, Emily Austin, one of them, has sat down and said that she's just a bit furious about what's happening to these beauty pageants, because she said that the outrage about a trans woman coming to a Miss Universe, a trans woman has bought Miss Universe.
Yeah.
A trans woman named, I'm going to try to pronounce this properly, Anne Jakrajutati. She bought the rights to Miss Universe and has bankrupted it and is trying to bring it back to life. And this last year's judge, Emily Austin, said this is insane because this trans person is saying we're trying to empower women through this contest.
Yeah.
And this trans person is a man in a dress and is allowing other men in dresses to compete. Miss Portugal, who'll be running in when the contest happens this year, is trans. Ms. Netherlands is trans.
Yeah.
Miss Netherlands, you're right, is a bit rough. You pointed it out. I think Miss Portugal's looking good, but maybe it's all the olive oil in the diet. I'm just saying that this judge is saying, I don't know how to judge these contests anymore because I'm not going to give the award to a guy in a dress. And she basically kind of cited the fact that this would have happened before 2015 because, as we know, Donald Trump owned the contest, and he would have never let any of this happen. The minute he sold it, it's gone to pot, so to speak.
Donald Trump needs to seize control of all business in the Western world.
Well, Russia wouldn't have invaded the Ukraine, the war might be a better place. I would not have ever voted for Trump, but there are benefits. But I'm just saying that some of these judges are saying we don't know how to judge this contest anymore. Whether it comes back to life or not, we don't know, because is there a point in funding this? It doesn't empower women if a guy's winning it.
Well, also, Nicholas, it seems that it's very in vogue at the moment to just give it to the transgender contestant, just as a sort of, even if they're obviously not the best looking. I mean, all right, some of them are good. I think Miss Portugal's
amazing.
Is amazing, but Miss Netherlands, oh my God, she could eat an apple through a tennis racket.
She looks like she's been kicked in the back of her head.
The societal changes that these transgender women are bringing to this competition and because This year, as you suggest, as you mentioned, we've had transgender Miss Netherlands for the first time, and also for the first time, Dutch men are saying, "I'd rather have sex with my wife than with Miss Netherlands." That had never happened before.
So this is actually going to improve family values. That's amazing. Anyway, that's that section finished with, but stay with us for a final section where we'll have friendly feminists, unfriendly prices, and an angry bear mauling an eco-protester. It's definitely worth staying up for. See you in a couple of minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I. So you want higher taxes? Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. We've got the Mail now with some good news. Feminists actually like men. Must be why they dress like them, Scott.
Well, there's a man-hating feminist myth that feminists think men are terrible and they blame them for their issues and they only want to be around women and all this stuff, which is not true at all. Jane Fonda has said that she was late in the game of feminism because she assumed being a feminist meant that she was angry with men, which clearly she wasn't. And people in 9 countries, including the UK, US, Italy, and Japan, were asked how warm and favorably they felt towards men. And feminists said, I'm fine. I feel positive about men. So I think that whole anti-male thing has been kind of busted, which is really good. And I think it's all happened a bit because of all this TERF dialogue that's going on now, and the LGBT community, LGBTIQ plus S community. S is for spirits. Anyway, I think all that kind of, you know, chubby people in pointing glasses with dyed magenta hair have said basically that feminists don't, and it's not true at all. I think by separating ours. You know, I've never been comfortable, to be honest with you, with the LGBTIQ myth, because lesbian and gay men don't necessarily get along. They're male and female. They might get along or they might not. Bisexuality doesn't exist. Sorry, Nico, but it doesn't. And I love trans people, you know, as long as they're in heels and a wig and through the roof. I want them dressed up so they're easy to catch. And then the rest, the intersexual, I have no idea. Q, questioning spirits.
Oh yeah, everything after the LGB, like lesbian, gay and bisexual, that means something. And it's an objectively sort of measurable, you know, thing. Whereas the TQ, the queer and the fetishes and all this
and the asexual, why do they need representation? They're fine.
It's like having a sport at the Olympics called not playing any sport.
I know. No one wants to go near the asexual, so just leave it. Also, I feel like, you know, a lesbian with a rifle, good idea. A gay man with a gun, maybe not, so we'll just show off. I feel like there's differences that have to be recognized, you know? Like, we're stuck with this community that's a bit of a lump, and that's not really progressing. And I'm not even sure that there's a necessity for that community in certain countries to really identify themselves so politically anymore. I think they've won in many ways, and I think celebrating that is what's a necessity, really.
Yeah. Well, staying with the theme, we've got the Express now, and an American town has banned public gayness. It's going to make their Pride March interesting, Nicholas.
Yeah, tell me about it. This is, let me read the headline first. Rural Tennessee town bans public gayness and offenders left facing 5 years in jail. Now, this is a rural town called Murfreesboro, if I'm pronouncing it right.
It's quite a lovely town. I looked it up and I thought it was going to be a trash pile, but it's not. It's all right, actually.
So they have something to lose, but it's basically moving in two directions. Again, I'm not sure why this article, the Express, insists that this is essentially against gay people, because all it says is indecent behavior, including indecent exposure, public indecency, lewd behavior, nudity, or sexual conduct. So I don't see anything.
Well, they do specify in the ordinance. They specify that sexual conduct includes homosexuality. So they're saying. Well, I mean, I guess they need to be clear on that, because you know, they're interpreting it here as like two men holding hands. That could trigger the law. But you know, do they need to be more specific? Does there need to be penetration? Anything like that?
Goodness. Well, yes, there does need to be, but I don't know about in that town. But I think that what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell LGBT people, you're not welcome here, don't come here, don't move here, don't open a business here. We have, you know, we're a Christian fundamentalist town, and we want to remain that way.
We've got enough already. Or it looks like it's an overreach, an overreaction to, because I know there have been a lot of books pushed into school libraries that are essentially pornographic.
This book is gay and stuff like that.
Yes, there's This Book is Gay, Queerfully and Wonderfully Made, Flamer, Let's Talk About It, and like, you know,
these books are not pornographic.
No, there are. I've seen some of these books.
You're
I keep some of them on a top shelf at my house and get them out at special occasions. But I mean, some of them are very literally. They've got diagrams of.
I flipped them looking for my own name. You know, fingers crossed. I think also, you know, it's difficult too, because you ask yourself, well, why would a gay person want to move to that town? Well, gay people might have grown up there. They might have family they're going to visit. Now, people.
Could be a Nigerian con man.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll tell you one thing about that town. The sex is good, because it's always better when it's illegal. Oh, I miss the old days. Oh,
win-win, right?
Man, straight guys will do just what they're told. Just what they're told. They like rules.
Moving on, we've got The Sun now with a potential solution to Just Stop Oil protests. Angry bears, Nicholas.
I like the sound of that. Eco-activist mauled by a bear after disturbing its den, trying to prove it was forced to move out by loggers. So this is the irony of the night, possibly the week. This German activist, it's always Germans, the ones who buy ships to do taxi service between Africa and the Italian shoreline. And this time a German is in Polish Carpathian mountains. They were actually filming an area that they presumed was empty of bears because of loggers. And wouldn't you know it, there was a bear, got very angry and mauled them.
Yeah, because they were basically in its den, or whatever a bear's house is called.
Yeah.
So it came
whatever,
out.
And it's funny too. A woman had her hand torn off in the U.S. last week because she was petting a small bear, and she's like, "It was just in my garden. I just thought it was sweet." It's like, it's a wild animal, and maybe you don't deserve your hands. Maybe you're better off now because you won't do it again. Oh my God, people when people infantilize animals, or they try to give them human characteristics.
Yeah, anthropomorphize them. We saw that with
the dangerous thing you can do. Really.
Yeah, and then they eat you because they're not people,
or they just think you're a toy.
And also, a lot of people would like to eat you as well.
Yes, exactly.
And then this eco-activist had to be saved by the loggers and the forestry commissioner, people that they'd been at war with.
Double irony. Isn't it?
Anyway, let's squeeze this one in. We're staying with the animal world with the Times now, and the news that killer whales don't like heavy metal. I think they prefer a bit of seal, Scott.
They do. I put that story aside because where is it? You have it? Okay. Yes, thank you very much. Frustrated skippers have resorted to blasting heavy metal to deter the whales. Apparently, along the Strait of Gibraltar, it's a real whale hub. Is that the right word? Hub? A hub, a whale hub. I'm scrambling. It's a whale hub, and these skippers are saying, you know, we can't get away from the whales. So the only thing to get rid of them is this loud music that they make that noise when they hear it. I can't do the sound, but you know the whale song. The whale song. They make the whale song because they're frustrated, and then they wail away.
Right. Yeah. And we're going to quickly try and squeeze this one in 30 seconds. We've got the Metro now with a story about London prices. Any Scots or Yorkshiremen watching, please make sure you're sitting down. Nicholas, fill us in.
You know, someone's shocked that fish and chips at Harrods, notably a luxury store in London, for those who don't know, are really expensive. Now, fish and chips is, of course, a humble meal, and
it is at Harrods as well. We've got a picture here. It looks like school dinners.
I know.
Look at that.
£37.
£37.
Better be a good piece of fish.
You can count the chips. 9 chips.
That's
absolutely ridiculous.
You know, small portions are a staple of pretentious food, but 9 chips was maybe a bit too much.
Absolutely.
I think it's just about the atmosphere.
The show is nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Saturday's front pages. The Guardian leads with Cameron call for billions in foreign aid risks Tory anger. The Telegraph has Jeremy Hunt, the time has come for tax cuts. The Daily Express has Prime Minister gets punchy. I'll take on anyone standing in our way of the Rwanda plan. You said that before. The iNews has Labour Health Chief tells NHS, I'll hold the door wide open for help from the private sector. The Times has toxic NHS puts people at risk, says Watchdog. And the Star has 2028, the return of woolly mammoths. And those were your front pages, and that's all we have time to. Thank you to my guests, Scott Capurro and Nicholas DeSanto. Nicholas will be here again tomorrow. Good night.
God.
Who is it? We're here for the show. Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour with me, John Cleese. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie.
Second best.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Ah!
No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GBNews.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GBNews,
Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GBNews, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is